Why an international currency is the biggest threat to freedom that the world has ever seen. Current corporate power versus what it could become. To put it in perspective, the top 10 corporations already hold $19.2 trillion in market cap. That is not including current assets. Furthermore, on top of that, they are making a push to create tokenization, which essentially will put a dollar value, whatever currency this new currency will become, a value on your data, on any resource available, and essentially make it tradable. All world governments combined spend 60 trillion annually. Some corporations already have more lawyers, lobbyists, and resources than most governments. A global currency would amplify this dramatically. Areas of dangerous power concentration. Control over the currency itself. Who governs a global currency becomes critically important. Corporations would spend billions lobbying whatever governing bodies exist. History shows corporations capture regulatory bodies over time. They could potentially influence interest rate decisions, money supply, transaction regulations, monetary policy. The lobbying problem. One body controls everything, no monetary escape valve, single point of influence, and regulatory arbitrage eliminated. This would all be held by corporations. Financial leverage would explode. Amongst capital movement, corporations could move vast sums instantly with zero currency friction. No more currency conversion delays, slowing capital flight. Could overwhelm smaller economies with capital movements, essentially gives them a financial weapon against governments. Consider this scale. Apple alone holds 165 billion in cash reserves. Like I said earlier, that does not include assets. That exceeds the GDP of over 130 countries. Under a global currency, they could deploy that instantaneously anywhere. No government could effectively block or slow large capital movements. Specific control mechanisms they would gain. 1. Labor control. True global wage setting becomes possible. Workers in every country competing on the same currency scale. Corporations could systematically find the lowest wage anywhere instantly. Unions become nearly powerless against global wage arbitrage. Middle-class wages could be driven toward global average. Current global average is $2,000 a month. Granted, I want to also state that is not enough for anything. That's enough for your groceries. And I mean, maybe some bills just here and there, but, say goodbye to ever owning a home, because it's going to be purchased by a corporation. 2. Tax avoidance at scale. Already, corporations shift $1 trillion annually to avoid taxes. A global currency makes this faster, cheaper, harder to track, and harder to regulate. Governments lose tax revenue, corporations fill the power vacuum. 3. Political influence. Campaign finance becomes truly global. A corporation could fund political movements in any country instantly. No currency barriers to political interference. Small nations become especially vulnerable. 4. Infrastructure control. With unlimited, frictionless capital, corporations could buy critical infrastructure globally. Water systems, power grids, internet infrastructure, transportation networks. Governments would struggle to outbid or resist. What this looks like sector by sector. Technology companies already control information flow. Global currency gives control of payment systems, could become de facto banks globally. Amazon, Apple, Google already have payment platforms, and this could potentially replace traditional banking. Energy companies no longer need to navigate currency exchange. could control energy pricing globally. Saudi Aramco, Exxon, Shell operating in one currency. Governments lose leverage over energy pricing. Financial corporations. Banks like JP Morgan, with $3.9 trillion in assets, become extraordinarily powerful. Could essentially function as central banks. Lending decisions could shape entire national economies. Too big to fail becomes too big to regulate. Pharmaceutical companies could set global drug prices with less resistance. No currency arbitrage to allow cheaper drugs in other countries. Regulatory capture becomes global rather than national. The fundamental concern: corporate sovereignty. Some economists and political theorists argue this could lead to corporations becoming more powerful than governments. The concept of corporate sovereignty, where corporations effectively write their own rules, control essential services, have more influence than elected officials, create a form of corporate feudalism. Historical precedent. The East India Company essentially governed India. It had its own army, courts, currency, and laws. This is widely considered one of history's greatest abuses of power. A global currency could give modern corporations similar or greater power. I would like to note also, we've seen this in certain media, like the plot of Cyberpunk 2077. I'm sure Cyberpunk is sort of its own world at this point. Essentially is this. Corporations control any and everything. Corporations then essentially become acting bodies, and, much of the world has been destroyed. There's mega cities that are pretty much operated by corporations, and where corporations then fight each other and have wars. That's why the world was devastated in that, is because there were corporate wars. Furthermore, this doesn't solve any problems. This only makes rich people richer and poor people poorer. And furthermore, it is going to make more people poorer than anything ever has. Because the fact that any resource and anything can be bought and sold, that's always been true. But now, under one currency, say goodbye to morals, essentially. I'd like to further state, no government could topple this. This is our moment now in time to fight back, but hopefully it isn't too late. I think there will always be resistance towards this, even if it were a thing. People would resist this and create their own currencies, but they will never reach the level of what corporate greed essentially can buy. Thank you. May God bless. Much love.